Hi, welcome to the PhD Journey Unplugged podcast. Here we are recording the first official episode of 2026. It's episode
Ooh.
42, and I'm so excited to have back my friend Andrew Schubauer.
How you
And
doing, everyone?
yep, he's the founder of Mountain Wisdom LLC. He's been on past episodes with me, and I always learn so much from our conversations, and I enjoy them so much. So I'm excited to have you back. And we are going to talk about self-efficacy and why self-efficacy is important in behavior change. And so what does it mean and what does that look like? Before we get started, I always like to say at the beginning of my podcast episodes that what we share is for general informational purposes only and should not be taken as professional advice. Even though we're experts on the topic, we're still, we're talking in generalities. We would really need to work with somebody one-on-one to provide specific personalized information. So this is more general informational purposes only. So with that said, I'm going to let Andrew if you want to learn more about his background, you can find it on one of our past podcast episodes. But pretty much, he's a life coach. He's got a lot of knowledge. I'll let him talk a little bit about that, and then we're gonna jump right into the topic. So, hi.
Hi. So, thank you for the introduction, Sarah. And yeah, I mean, to be honest, the easiest way to find out more about me or to find out if I can help you would to be go to my website. And it's really simple. It's mountainwisdomllc.com. So just check me out there. You can find me at Andrew Schubauer at on Instagram. However, my name is harder than Mountain Wisdom LLC. So I just recommend going to the website, and if you want to check out my socials, you can go to the link at the bottom of the first page. But more important part, self-efficacy. So self-efficacy in itself is simple in definition.
Okay.
It's your level of belief in your ability to take action. It was originally developed alongside the social cognitive theory and social learning theory by Albert Bandura back
Mhm.
in the 60s and 70s. Um, He was the one who initially realized that there was a link. Before that, it was primarily behaviorism. We see, monkey do. He started recognizing something that we all know now in psychology that we're motivated by our beliefs. We're heavily motivated by our beliefs in what we take on, how we learn, how we process, how we interpret. And that's really where self-efficacy came from. Um, but what it boils down to again is how much you believe you can do what you do.
Hmm.
Uh, the trick here is that if you don't believe you can do it, it's not that you can't. And that's the biggest issue. We'll get into that later. But the biggest issue is just because you don't believe you can doesn't mean you can't. But it does have an incredibly high, it is an incredibly high factor in determining whether you will and whether you stay with something. So that's kind of why, like with Sarah, why we wanted to do this episode in January. Because we probably all have new goals and new
Yeah.
plans. I know Sarah has a lot of goals.
Too many goals.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, that's the core of self-efficacy, guys. It's how much do you believe in what you're doing? The other thing is it's not a one-time thing, and that's something else we'll get into later in the episode. It's not you because your level of belief is going to change moment to moment or day to day, and we can get into some of that a little later.
Well, the way I understand it is like two people could have the same skill set.
Mhm.
One person believes that they can do it. The other person maybe there's a continuum of how much you believe in yourself, having a lot of confidence, maybe it's not black or white, but just having that belief, like adding on top of the skill set, the belief that you can do it is, I think, what propels you more towards success. Okay. Like, let's just talk about the Iron Man. something I've always thought I always wanted to do it, right?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily believe I can. And so I think that holds me back. So I also think, and I'm curious to hear what you say about it, is fear. How much is fear wrapped into belief or or not believing in yourself that you can do something?
Significantly. So let's peel back fear real quick,
Okay.
um, and look at it from a survivalist mechanism
Hmm.
and where self-efficacy plays in there. We are designed to be self-protective because we're also designed to be self-propagating, right? We want to survive so we can continue our species. That's not a conscious thing. I mean, we all know it is a conscious thing. Like you may think about it, oh, I don't want to. But a lot of that comes from older hardwiring, right? Um, what is it? I'm missing the word right now, but genetic memory. There we go. Genetic memory. So it's risk analysis in our subconscious happens. So if we believe we can do something, the risk is lower. If we don't believe we can do something, the risk is higher. So all the other systems in our body and our mind are going to support one or the other.
Okay. So, so how do you get it? How do you get self-efficacy? How do you get belief? You know? I mean, we all have good intentions, right? We all, if you're like anybody, any human, I guess, we all want to do well for the most part. Even if you're really struggling. And I think we have good intentions, especially talking about this in January. We all start off the year, with these lofty goals. And I always say in past episodes, it's better to break these goals into smaller parts anyway than to have these like massive goals. Like, I'm going to lose 30 pounds. Well, let's just start with like two, or however, whatever it is, a health goal, an academic goal, an athletic goal. I think we have good intentions, but how do we not, why do we not stay focused? Why don't we sometimes not get there?
Quickest way I could sum it up is we set beliefs in outcome. We set outcomes based on big goals or larger timelines,
Okay.
but we set our beliefs based on individual results. For instance, if you decide you're going to do something, say working out, like the old joke about fitness, who's like, we all know what's going to happen in the gyms in January, and then we all know how quiet they're going to be in March. It's a bad joke, but working personal training and working with a lot of people who are athletes, I'm sure you as well, it's somewhat true. But it's also like going outdoors, anything like that. Anything that requires effort. If we mismatch our expectations to our timelines, it can ruin it. That's why, like, why do taking small act why is it important to take small actions?
I think you can see
Well,
progress in smaller steps. And then
it is.
when you see that progress, it gives people a sense of encouragement, right? I think that sometimes when we set goals, we sometimes I believe like, our belief systems is like you say, maybe it's mismatched a little bit. It's something we want to do, but we're not sure we can do it. Well, if we break them into smaller steps, then we are telling our mind, our brain, everything like,
Mhm.
okay, I can do this. I can do this. And then you take all those small steps and then it leads to, you get closer to that goal. I actually just said this. I'm not sure. I guess I need to confess, the last couple weeks I've been very busy on social media. I've just been having fun, and we've been
Mhm.
doing some things together, which has just been fun. And but I think I said on one of my reels, I was making a joke. Yesterday or Friday was a year since I defended my final defense.
Mhm.
And I have a friend in school who used to always say, it's another step. There were so many steps. And so like hundreds of steps. And even after the final defense, there were more steps in terms of getting your dissertation published and
Yeah.
and so if we started in August 2020 and we just looked at it in its entirety, it kind of seemed like, you know, how are we going to get through 5 years of this? And so when you break it into these smaller steps, I mean, I literally, Andrew used to like put a check mark next to each step, you know? And it's fun now to look back on that sheet of paper and a little long-winded, I apologize, but my point is that and we know hindsight's 2020, looking back, I understand all those small steps added up to the outcome. Um, so if you can build your frame of reference around the goals that you have for your life, whatever it is, there's no way Andrew and I can know what your goals are for 2026, but we can tell you through this episode today that if you start to look at that in segments, that you will be successful. You just break it down into smaller parts. What do you think about
Yeah.
all that? That was a mouthful. I apologize.
No, you're good. So just like what you said, and again about why it's important to break things down into small steps is because we need proof.
There you go.
So you start out with faith and belief. Like there's different kinds of belief. There's blind faith, which if we've never done anything before in a particular vein before, or we don't realize how some of our skills can translate to what we're doing now, if we don't make those connections, it feels very empty. We believe in ourselves. We can believe in our abilities, but then we need to structure what we do to support that belief. And that's where the small steps come into play. Um, if you if you guys go online after this, look up the confidence competence loop. You'll find it all over, and it's exactly what it says. Belief and confidence always go hand in hand, right? The more confident you are, the more solid you feel in doing something. Again, how much do you believe you can do it? How much confidence do you have in success? The overlap. And what it is every time, Sarah, you ticked off one of those boxes, that's cognitive proof of your ability to accomplish your goal.
Hmm.
So by doing all those little things and recognizing the steps, breaking it down to action, more reasonable action than if you were just like, instead of doing all those steps, you're just going to somehow miraculously be like, I'm going to do my entire PhD tomorrow, right? You can't. I mean, for one, it's not. So if how much do you believe you could ultimately get your PhD? You look at that belief versus how much do I believe I can accomplish it in a day?
Well, let me say one quick thing because I read this about the self-efficacy, studying for our episode today.
Mhm.
Like, you have to have a skill set behind the belief, right? I could say, I believe I can fly an airplane. I have no skill. I can't
Hmm.
just jump in an airplane and fly it. Right? So you have to develop, it goes hand in hand with developing the skills. So having the skill set
Yeah.
where I believe what you're saying is where we build confidence, right?
Hmm.
If I go out there and I'm consistent and I'm dedicated and it's hard work and I go to the track and I run a mile and I practice and I do everything I need to do to get faster because I want to get a faster, let's say mile, right?
Hmm.
I can work hard to get there. I can take those steps to get there. I can build that confidence to get there, and then I can have the belief that I can get there. So I think
Yeah.
they all kind of go hand in hand. I think we can't just put ourselves into something and say, I believe I can do this. I think sometimes you have to lay the foundation and you have to have the skill set to get you there.
To be honest, so
And you can say
depending
yes
on
or
how we're
no.
talking about it, I would disagree
Okay, good. I like that.
because you can believe you can fly a plane
Okay.
without believing you can fly a plane right now.
Okay.
So you can believe in your ability, you can break it down. And again, that's another part of breaking it down to meaningful chunks. When you're working towards a goal, find the chunk where your belief is high and start there.
Okay.
So maybe you don't know how to fly a plane. Maybe you don't know anything about avionics or the mechanisms, anything like that. But if you go back far, you do know how to, you know how to read.
Right. I
You
can
know
read a
how to
manual.
study.
Yes.
What's your belief in your ability to learn a new skill? Sometimes
Okay.
that's where people have to start. Sometimes it's just a matter of taking just a skill and learning it, something simple. What's the smallest thing that you can have a high level of confidence that you can accomplish? And start there. And then that builds. So just as you were saying, that builds. And then your self-efficacy rises to the larger aspects because you've built the skills. Even if you had no skill in the area, in the first place. So you don't have to have any skill to believe you can, but you have to understand that your starting line, well, technically your starting line is the same place, but if you've never even walked before, you can't expect to be as fast as like Usain Bolt.
Right. No,
Like so
that's
um
why I always love learning from you because I sometimes say these kind of lofty things and you always break them down and you're right. Like let's say I want to fly an airplane. Okay. I can take the steps to learn to ultimately get there if I believe in myself, right? And so I like that. I think that that's really important, the way you just explained that. So for anybody, whatever goals you're setting for yourself for this year, or maybe you're in the midst of, working towards something right now that carried over from last year or, a couple years prior. I mean, I always say never give up, right? And if you feel a little bit overwhelmed and whatever it is that you're going through in your life, like, think about self-efficacy in terms of a strategy to break something down into smaller steps to get closer to those goals.
yeah, find what you do believe you can do and
Yeah.
build off that.
Yeah.
Um
Love that. I love that actually. It's awesome. I wrote down belief doesn't follow success, success follows belief.
yeah. And it's similar to the article that I read and shared with you,
Mhm.
Sarah, not too long ago about like the amount of effort that athletes will put into something. It's a pain versus outcome that's happening in their mind will determine how their pace. It can actually they've studied that it actually has um an actual effect on their pace, how much pain they're in versus how much motivation they have to complete it. But in another way, but on top of that, it's also how much they believe they can. How hard are you going to push if you think you're going to fail?
Well, that's so let's talk about that for a second. Well, okay, well, let me ask you this. Why would somebody go into something thinking they're going to fail at it? Where does that come from?
It depends. It can come from a couple different places. Most people won't, to be honest. So the this is going to sound this may be a little biased, but I believe it's also true. The more accepting of yourself as a person, the more you would do that because the risk is lower to failure. How much you're going to judge yourself. So if you know you've never done it before, you can go in maybe expecting to fail. That will still, if you expect to fail, there's a lot of micro things that may happen self-sabotage
Hmm.
in terms of self-sabotage, in terms of like micro hesitations, like especially in something physical that you may end up doing. Like think of if you're afraid of heights or sketchy. So, or not afraid of heights, but afraid of. So I have walked across way too many very sketchy trees across fast running water. And every time I had to steady myself because initially there's that fear of falling and somehow my legs don't want to work right. It's not like I all of a sudden can't. It's not like my legs got instantly weaker, but my brain made them weaker and made me feel unstable.
Mhm.
I had to correct it. So if you expect you're going to fail, you are, that's where that previous saying comes into play. If you expect to fail, you most likely will. The flip side is you can go into something knowing you have no experience about it and accepting you might fail. Not that you will fail, but owning the fact that I don't have a skill in this, but I want to try. I just want to explore. Let's see.
Well, can
I
I
just
put,
want to go into it and get a baseline.
all right, I'm going to put you on the spot for just a second.
Sure.
Okay. So Andrew has hiked thousands of miles in mountain terrain, right?
Yep.
And he's been part of search and rescue teams for humans and for pets, animals out in the mountainous terrain. Okay. A lot of the trekking that you've done, and I hope that's the right word because it's not really
Yeah.
okay. Was there ever a moment, and I don't know if you're at, what that looks like, if you're hiking on trails or if you're climbing, boulders or cliffs, I just don't know what that looks like. Was there ever a moment, let's put self-efficacy in practice here. Was there
Okay.
ever a moment where you questioned your skills and were scared of failing? And if so, how did you talk yourself out of it? Obviously, you're still here. So if there was an experience like that, you succeeded. So I'm just curious because you have so much, because your company's Mountain Wisdom LLC. So I want to push you a
Yeah.
little bit to talk about that wisdom and what that looks like in terms of self-efficacy. Because you've done things most
Well,
people will never do and have never done.
sure. I'll give you two scenarios.
Okay.
First one was probably, I guess, close to the start of my backpacking career, like over a little over 2 decades ago when I started getting into it heavily. And I went on a trip, a 5 day trip out in North Cascades to climb a peak called Desolation Peak. The trail isn't that hard. It's not that complicated. It's a well-used trail along a beautiful lake. For the record, I highly recommend it. Um, to climb up to Desolation Peak, you're not, but I hadn't done it. I had different gear, and I ended up not finishing. I wasn't able to do the miles. I thought I could do it. I ended up having to turn around, um, literally a day shy of when I would have made it. Right. And I hiked back out. I didn't hike big miles. It wasn't an overly challenging route. Um, and I say that because I went back 20 years later and hiked it, and it seemed easy. But another time I was in the Adirondacks, and it was early spring, and I started out and I thought I was doing good, but as early spring goes, snow hit. Well, the snow was already there, but it softened. And I ended up coming down. I got worried about timelines, and I started side hilling. So to answer a previous question or part of that question, I love going off trail so much. It's so much fun. It's the high point of exploration for me. It's like, do I think nobody's been there before? I don't know, but I don't care. I know nobody's been there recently. But, um, but either way, it's just more fun. So, but anyway, I started side hilling to try to get out on time, before it got dark.
What is side hilling?
So typically trails will work their way up a ridge line or onto a ridge line or follow a ridge line. Um, follow like most gradual path from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain or have switchbacks in there. Adirondacks doesn't really do a whole lot of switchbacks. The East Coast doesn't in general, do as many. But I ended up in what's called deadfall. And deadfall is exactly what it sounds. Trees die or they get blown over in storms and they overlap. So I was in snow that was breaking through, and it was early enough that the snow meter, I think at the top was like it was like 16 feet. Like I was on the ridge when I started, like I was walking past the top of trees. But I got down and I really started worrying that I would not make it out. I didn't have the physical ability to. I really started to question whether I could make it up because I kept falling through the snow and catching, and I was so lucky because all it would have taken for me to fall, turn a little bit, and I would have broke an ankle, broke a leg, popped a knee out because I was falling down to my waist, coming down the side of this hill with no other way to go. It was nothing but deadfall underneath softening snow.
Okay.
Uh, and what I had to do is I had to stop and I had to think, what do I need to succeed? If I keep going at the pace I'm going, I'm risking severe, you know, serious injury. And there's no way to avoid potential injury, but I had
Hmm.
to slow down. Like I realized that if I take a more measured pace, I recognized I was kind of getting into a little bit of panic mode as the sun's starting to set. Um, it had been only a couple years into backpacking for me at that time. But I realized it's like, but I do know I have been backpacking for years and this is new. But, and I had to remind myself I did have the right equipment. And if I kept pacing, I would fatigue myself. But if I slowed down and gave myself time to rest, I could recover, I could stay stable, and I made it out. Um, and admittedly, that's not the first time. I have a really bad habit of getting impatient in springtime and getting out into mountains. Maybe before most people would recommend it, and I ask them out. But so it's not the first time. But my self-efficacy dropped simply because I was because of my pacing, because of the way I was approaching the problem. But when I slowed down and reassessed, I realized that there's no reason I'm not capable of getting out. And I readjusted my strategy and I got out just fine.
I mean,
And my legs were shredded.
that's a, and I think that's just a great story. And you asked yourself, what do I need to do to be successful here?
Yeah.
So those are great stories. I feel free anytime we are on episode to share your stories because I think they're great. And I believe that you've learned a lot of lessons out there, hence Mountain Wisdom LLC. Probably a lot of different lessons about survival, but life too. But
Yeah.
when you ask yourself, what do I need to do to succeed? I've said this on past episodes. I learned a lot of lessons like you learned from the mountains. I
Mhm.
learned a lot of lessons in the PhD journey.
Yeah.
And I always say, to people, like, set yourself up for success. Okay? Think about what that looks like for yourself. It's very highly individualized. You might live in a very quiet environment and you can think and you can write and you can work and you can do all those things um, and be successful. I happen to live in a very active, busy household. I had to go to the library to be
Mhm.
successful. I had to find spaces to work on. I mean, even I remember somebody, it may have been my mom was in the hospital, and that whole thing, that when you go through that, somebody's sick and in the hospital,
Mhm.
it's kind of crazy. I went into the chapel. It was the
Mhm.
quietest spot in the hospital. I went into the chapel to study. So you have to, so what we're talking about, and the example Andrew just gave with the mountain, coming down that trail and asking yourself, what do I need to do to be successful? Whether it's a loss goal, um, athletic goal, professional goal, you want to grow your business, you want to move towards retirement, you want to run a marathon, you want to, whatever it is that's on your heart that you want to go after. I think it's important to do some self-reflection. Um, to understand that like wherever you are on that path that you had like you were early in the years, like you've been now doing this for would you say 20 plus years now. So
Yep.
what would you tell that younger self of yours? Like you only had what the skill set you had at that point in time, but you knew to like slow down, and maybe that comes from your military background too. But I think that, what would you have told your younger self? Like what lessons did you learn there?
I probably would have told my younger self, have a little more faith
Okay.
that you're more you're a little it's like recognize what you've already been through. Because at that point, why I hadn't had hiking, I've been in a lot of hard situations, challenging situations. It was more emotional than physical. Before that, but if I really thought about it, I was like, I could have easily I can't say easily, but I could have done that. I like on the in Ross Lake, I could have probably summited Desolation Peak the first time I tried
Mhm.
and trusted in my gear maybe a little more. But at the time, I didn't have the experience. Like I said, it's a skill set, and I wasn't sure, and I really started doubting myself. Um, but when I went back again, 20 years later for my 40th, I was like, yeah, that was my big 40th thing. I did some ultras, and I went back and climbed that, and I climbed it a totally different way harder way than it was originally the original route. Um, but I would have just probably told myself to have a little faith and that you can you can do this. Just you just have to push a little harder, but it's not going to be a breaking point.
Mhm. That's awesome. I love that. I think as we talk about self-efficacy and behavior change, I do think we sometimes have to learn the hard way. I mean, I remember I was in my 20s. I was training for the Marine Corps Marathon, and I was out on a trail in Washington, D.C. It was August. I think I was like mile 16. It was the distance that day. I was doing it through, it was called the AIDS Marathon. Back then, it was a lot of programs for AIDS research. And so I was
Yeah.
part of that program. They had us out there running that day. It was hot, it was humid, and
Mm.
I got dehydrated. My electrolytes, through sweating and everything, like all out of balance. I ended up in the hospital on an IV. Now, why do I make that? Why did I bring this up? Okay, well, I believed I could do it, right? I'd been running my whole life. I knew I have the skill set to do it. I just I guess I learned the hard way, right? I learned in that experience never to let myself, get to that point again. So sometimes I feel like as we talk about behavior change, sometimes you just have to sometimes you just have to learn the hard way too. It isn't always like neat and pretty and tied in a little bow. Like we kind of sometimes we fumble, we skin our knee, we fall, and then we learn too. So I just think that's important aspect to this conversation, It's not always I have a friend who always says life gets lifey. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You
Agreed.
know? And that's where you learn. Sometimes that's really you think about children. Sometimes they learn, when when they fall. And so I think that's important.
Well, actually, the children, what you said is a really good point. They noticed they fell, but unlike what we do a lot of times now, they noticed they fell. They didn't learn they couldn't do it. And that's what we do to ourselves a lot of times now and how we sabotage our self-efficacy.
Mm.
We try something, it doesn't work out, and then somehow we decide that that is going to teach us that we can't do something, and we never try again. Now, obviously, not for you, not for me, but there's a lot of people and there's a lot of situations that you probably can think of people. I know I can think of people where just because something didn't work out first, I can say that with hiking a lot. If people go out and they didn't have the right gear, they'll go out, they'll try it, they'll have a miserable time, and they'll say hiking's not for me. And it's not. But the truth is, or backpacking's not for me. It's like, or maybe the equipment you used was not for you.
Well, I
So
think
it's
I'm having an epiphany right now because I have shared with you and so Andrew and I bumped into each other today out on a trail. It's snowy here. It's cold. Most people are not, we're not. I don't think we saw anybody out there actually. Did
nope,
we?
no.
Okay. That says a lot about like, uh the type of people we are,
Hmm.
I guess. We enjoy being out in the elements. But I shared with you, and I've shared with you in the past, like I'm scared of heights. Okay.
Hmm.
I just had an epiphany because I shared earlier today. in when I was in college, I went on this kind of like outward bounds trip. It was a lot of fun. I
Hmm.
love being out in nature. I was all excited. It was great. We
Hmm.
camped. I think we even got lost out there. I mean, it was just fun. I mean, lost within a boundary.
Yeah, no,
Like we weren't
yeah.
like lost, lost. We were kind of lost. Anyhow, we did some rock climbing,
Hmm.
and I shared that with you this morning that I made it up, and I was just at the top, and it was pretty high. And then I looked down, and I got scared. And instead of pushing through that fear, I was so close to the top, and
Hmm.
I had all the right equipment, and I was being spotted, and it wasn't like a crazy climb. I wanted to go down. I rappelled
Hmm.
down. I've never done it since, and I think that's where that fear of heights started, right then and there, which I just am discovering on this episode today.
Hmm.
So I think that it's time to try that again.
I hear there's a rock gym somewhere 40 minutes north of us, something like that.
Yes, it's time to overcome that fear. So stay tuned, podcast listeners.
Check it out. But I
But
would want to talk.
but you understand
Oh,
my point is like sometimes
yeah,
the fears, I put it in my mind I can't do it, and I've just held on to that fear for a good 30 years, 30 plus years.
yeah.
All right, moving on.
So moving on, I did want to talk about some other things. So the confidence competence loop,
Okay.
the skill set, building the skill set for for supportive proof of your initial belief. Those are all really important. The other thing I want to talk about is the fact that sometimes we all know that when we're not moving fast enough, it can be demotivational.
Yeah, it's true.
So another thing I wanted to talk about is what's called value linking or motivational tethering.
Okay.
And this can really help with self-efficacy. So when you're starting to do something, you're starting to look, your self-efficacy is starting to drop. Sometimes that's time to tap into the positive side of willpower, I would say. And
Okay.
that's your motivation. Like when I say motivation, I put two words together. It's motive to activate, motive for activation,
Oh, I like
right?
that.
Because that's really what it is. It's like, why are you doing something? It's the reason you're doing something.
Okay.
Um, so sometimes motivational tethering or value linking, like, why do you want to lose, say, like, to go back to what you said, I want to lose 30 pounds. That potentially can be very arbitrary, right? Like, I just want to, or even if it's not, it it can feel that way in process. You're like, why am I doing this to myself? Because sometimes it's a lot of work, right? Losing 30 pounds isn't easy for people. Um, there's a lot of work that goes into it. And sometimes that self-efficacy and that doubt can start feeling in. So the motivational tethering, the value linking is moving beyond the outcome of 30, taking that goal, that 30 pounds or whatever it is you want to do, learning to fly, right? Learning to become a pilot. Why
Hmm.
does that matter? Connecting it to other aspects. Like, what will this get me outside of that? If I have my pilot's license, I can fly more places. I can go more places. I can take people places if I get like I can meet more people. The way it's like I'm supporting my longevity. Like if I weigh less, I'm putting less weight on my knees and my joints when I'm running. So I'll be able to run longer, which I value. Running gives me a lot of happiness. So 30 losing 30 pounds, maybe a lot of times it's a superficial goal, especially when it comes to specific weight points. I mean, outside of like there or reconnecting to maybe you're losing it for health reasons, right? So obesity or things like that. But what does that actually lead to? Why does that matter? Why do I care about how long I live? Well, because I want to do these things, right? Why do I want to
It's a great
improve my
point.
health?
It's a great point.
So
You're bringing in motivation
exactly, you're not
into.
You're not in a single line for that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not just first, acquiring the skills, believing that you can do that, having the belief that you can succeed with those skill sets. Then you need to think about, you have to, you really, I just was listening to something before we got on today, a runner and one of those motivational reels. I listen to those all the time. I'm like, yes,
They're
I can do
great.
this. They are very motivational. And it said, these three words, what's your purpose? What's your reason? And what's your why? And how strong is
Mm,
your why?
yeah.
And it's really true. I mean, what's your purpose for the goals that you set for yourself? You know, the, we're now moving into the almost the end of January already. It's crazy. Well, and hopefully you're still working on your goals for the new year. If you're not, if you fell off the bandwagon, you know what? Every day's a new day, and this is a great episode to listen to get back on track. But ask yourself, like, what's your why? Like Andrew's saying, what's your why? Okay, I want to lose weight. Well, why? Are you doing it for did your doctor tell you to do it? Or is it coming from within? You just want to feel better. You're thinking about aging. You
Mhm.
have I've talked to you about wanting to walk the Camino de Santiago. If anybody out there listening today has done that, I'd love to hear from you. You have to, if there are things in your heart that you're passionate about, you have to be in a certain level of condition, physical fitness to do some of these things. So maybe
Mhm.
that's your why. Maybe you want to get on the floor and play with your grandchildren. I mean, there's lots of different reasons. So I
Mhm.
think I think we've said some interesting things like, tell yourself you can be successful, but think about what your why is. Um, what else have we said?
Um, a lot, but no, I know, isn't that helpful,
We're being
everyone?
so
Don't you find that helpful?
professional. We're so
Right?
professional. Just a few
Um,
hours ago, I was
no.
laying in the snow doing snow angels.
Hey, that is part of your wellness journey, and you should not take away from it.
Embrace it.
But embrace it. But no, so just connecting to a larger purpose, and sometimes that could be outside yourself. Maybe your internal motivations aren't like your selfish motivations aren't strong enough, but maybe by doing this action, you're in some way able to support someone else.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's in building that confidence again. So it's just the more links you can have, the more whys you can have, the more positive outcomes you can have from a particular action, the easier it is to recenter on why to take that action. Like me, I people around here, if they saw me, would be convinced that I love running and I love working out. You know what I love?
Being
I
out
love
in
being able to do stuff. I
yeah.
love climbing mountains.
Yeah.
So I do it all. I use a stair stepper for like an hour at work. I'm just chugging along at my desk because I don't have mountains where we live. I do step ups in place. It's very redundant. It's very boring, but it's so that when I go out and do it, I can do it without struggling. I can get back out into the mountains and enjoy it the way I want to.
Hmm.
So when I start to struggle, I link it to the adventures I have with my friends and some personal pride in being the friend that my friends who want to do something that everyone else tells them no to. Hey, do you want to do this in the mountains? That I can say yes to
Hmm.
and can probably actually accomplish.
Hmm.
And so it's time with friends. The whole reason I got into running is because I had a bunch of friends who like to run and they drug me along on their 5Ks and we were active and healthy people. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this so I have more time to hang out with you. So
Yeah.
it's
I think that's
can I
important. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
Oh no, I was gonna say whatever you were gonna say, but then I was gonna introduce another
Okay. What was I gonna
if we
say?
have time.
Yep, we're good. I was just gonna say that I know people probably heard this, but like when you see somebody show up for something, like the Olympics, right? Olympics are starting, right? And we're gonna watch people compete. Like it could be a minute, it could be a sec, it could be seconds, it could be minutes. Um, it could be a little bit longer that depending on what the sport is that they're competing in, right? They've put years of hard work, years of discipline, years of sacrifice, years of passion and purpose and reason and why, and probably questioning whether this is the path and self-doubt and all these things for that moment.
Mm.
And I think it's important to remember, like you don't get to success just but you don't fast track to being like the level of mountain climber that you are. Like you said, you do the work, you put in the work. There's just a lot of behind the scenes, and I just think it's important to understand that. Like, yeah, it's fun. Things are fun, and you should be having fun and enjoyment, but sometimes it just takes a lot of hard work too. And you just have to understand they come hand in hand. So if you really want to change and you really want to be successful in behavior change and believe that you can change, you might have to do a little bit of hard work too. I don't
Yeah.
mean to be like
If
Debbie Downer, and it isn't. It's just the reality of success.
Yeah, no, there's a documentary out. I think it's called Going for Gold.
Okay.
That actually the whole thing is about the mental health struggles of Olympic athletes
Hmm.
and a lot of things they go through and that we don't understand. And I found it fascinating.
Okay. Writing
But
it
yeah,
down.
like if it's not an immediate, if it's a high, if the result requires high effort, the groundwork does too. So, I mean, I don't think that's,
Great way to
and I
say
don't think
it.
that's negative. I think it's actually very positive. It's supportive. It's helping people maintain realistic perspective on outcomes.
That's a great
Because a
way to
lot of
say
time,
that. I can't wait to go back and listen to that again for myself. It's a great way to say it. All right.
can I
Well, what's
can I
next?
pivot to a third? I've got
Yes,
four.
absolutely. We'll
I've got
go.
four.
All right, we'll
I
go.
don't
We'll
want to
go
go
like
too
10 more
long.
minutes. We'll go to an hour.
Fair. So I'll go this really quick. So the next one is argumentative reasoning.
Okay.
Um, and this is kind of pulled from rational emotive behavioral therapy, um, which oddly enough came out a little before. Alberts, man, tell you, Alberts in the 50s and 60s had it going on. It was Albert Bandura that came up with the social cognitive theory. Before that, it's Albert Ellis who came up with the rational emotive, Albert Einstein. Anyway, tangent, over.
Real quick. Real quick.
He was before. Yeah.
My dissertation was grounded in self-determination theory, which probably came after Albert Bandura. And we'll talk about that at some point in the
Hmm.
future. It's
There you go.
another one. A lot of different theories out there on human
Hmm.
behavior and motivation.
So many.
Yeah.
But yeah, so argumentative reasoning is when, and this is a way to catch yourself. When you start out with a goal, again, generally you don't set out with things that you expect to fail at or you plan to fail at. You
Okay.
want to succeed. So most of us all, when we set goals for ourselves, we assume we can do them.
Hmm.
So when you get to a point where your self-efficacy is really low and you think maybe you can't, this is where the argumentative reasoning comes in, as I call it. Ask yourself why you think you can't. You thought you could then. What is going on now that you think you can't? What has changed in that time that makes you think you can't? And really reason it. There could be other things going on. You could have had, there's so much external that is unrelated to our goals that affects our sense of self-efficacy. Like if you're having a hard time sleeping, all of a sudden your sense of self-efficacy may go down. Because if you're tired, your body, your mind is like, no, rest, don't do hard things, don't pursue your goals.
Hmm.
Um, so really reason through what has changed. Rationalize it with yourself. Don't let your emotions guide your self-efficacy. See if you can, where are the facts? Where can you debate with yourself? It's like, well, I thought I couldn't, or I thought I could because of this.
Hmm.
Then now I feel like I can't. But are there signs, on counterpoint, are there signs that you can or you have been, that you have been progressing, even if it's not the same timeline that maybe you hoped or something like that?
Can I ask you one quick
Look for that proof.
question? One quick
Yeah.
question. would you suggest for people, like when they think about these things that we're talking about today,
Mhm.
like write them down, like get them out of your head, like, if there's something that's holding
Mhm.
you back or, just like everything we're talking about in terms of goal setting and behavior change, do you think writing it down helps?
Yeah,
Or just
I
think
think
about it?
writing,
Or like just the act of thinking about it?
so thinking about it is fine, but no, writing it down. So if you
Okay.
think about it in its purest sense, writing it down is actually manifestation
Okay.
because you're taking a thought that is just energy and creating something tangible with it. You're writing it on. So you're making it real in a different way. It now exists in your physical world as well as within your thought.
Mm.
So it's easier to be, and as we all know, it's easier to be objective when you're when you're looking at somebody else. Like why they always say that even like coaches need coaches because we can't
Hmm.
always see our own stuff, or therapists need therapists. To a smaller degree, when you write it down, you're able to look at it from that outside perspective. From it makes it easier to look at things from a little more rational perspective. Again, that's rational emotive therapy. It's looking at your emotions, seeing where the rationality and emotional management come into play.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, so I think writing it down, if you're having a really hard time figuring something out and you're just debating it back in your head, write it down.
Okay.
You can walk away, and then you can walk away from it, do something completely different, come back and look at it. And you don't have to remember everything. You can just look at what's right there in front of you.
Hmm. Good. It's good advice.
And then
Well,
the
not
last one.
technically advice, but kind of a, you know what I mean?
It's
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 general
a,
advice.
it's a helpful suggestion.
It's a
Yeah. I
helpful
mean, here's
suggestion.
it's a helpful suggestion. I mean, it's true. Everybody works differently. So anything I say,
Right.
some of it may work, some of it may not, same as you. You may have, we are complex human beings, and that's actually the last thing I want to get into when it
Okay.
comes to self-efficacy. When it comes to what you do, I strongly recommend taking a humanistic approach.
Okay.
So part of self-efficacy is about being fair and reasonable to
Hmm.
yourself. So yes, you may be able to accomplish something, but a lot of times we get into comparison traps and it really erodes our self-efficacy because we see somebody doing something and then we see what we're doing. And without even trying, we already decide we can't do it. Or we want to do something, or we think, especially like the PhD journey, yours probably very different from someone who was supported the whole way and started right after high school and followed a very traditional path. Would it be
Yeah.
easy for either of you? No. But did you have extra complications? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to recognize yourself as a human. And when you're creating goals and creating these systems on, I believe I can, when
Hmm.
it comes to the planning, you want to recognize your human state and your integrate it. How can you integrate it with the greatest success with your actual life rather than just trying to force people just try to force things in like it's just going to fit without really taking the time to recognize, but you're actually a person. You still need sleep. You still have these responsibilities. You still have all these other agreements on where your time needs to go, your energy needs to go. Um, and that's the last thing. Like if you want to maintain self-efficacy, you have to set goals that are fair and reasonable to your lifestyle. And if they're not, then something needs to change. You need to find a way to make it fair and reasonable, or maybe let something else go. But that's the last aspect. You cannot forget whatever you want to do, you can't forget that you're human. And you can't forget that you are living your individual life, and those goals need to fit within it.
Yeah, and I think first of all, I always tell you, I'm very open about it. I learned so much from you. I'm so glad our paths crossed. I think we shared one of our last episodes together, how that happened. I won't rehash
Yeah.
that here, but if you go back, you'll hear our story. But I learned so much from you. You put things in such a practical way to learn. I would suggest, and for myself too, I'm going to go back and listen to this and take notes and think about some of the things. You've given us a lot of really great insights into how to, how to think about behavior change. And I think what you're saying about taking this humanistic approach, because you don't want to lose. I mean, on the one hand, yes, it takes hard work sometimes, like to get a PhD. I mean, it takes hard work. But you also want to remember, you want to enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
If you hate the process, then you might not be aligned to where you're supposed to be. And that takes some introspection, that takes some reflection. I remember like the first year in my program, there was a point where I was definitely comparing myself. I was reading other people's work and, I kind of started going down that road of comparison. And then I really had a moment where I said, okay, you're here for you. And
Yeah.
when I shifted that way of thinking, it became a much more enjoyable process because I was like, my why is because I want to be here. So I
Hmm.
think that's important too, as we talk about all these different, and we probably could continue to talk about, we're not touching everything about self-efficacy. We're
So,
trying to fit it into like 45
yeah.
minutes to an hour conversation. But I think Andrew said it, we're highly individual. We approach things uniquely. Our lived experiences are different. Our environments that we're learning in are different. Our goals are different. Um, and so I think we need to always kind of remember that, um, and that's the best reason to work with somebody like Andrew, a coach, because he's helped me, he gives me clarity, and sometimes you need somebody else to give you some clarity, because you can't see it. Sometimes we have blinders on. We just can't see it.
Well, well, I love doing what I do. If I can help
Ta-da!
someone as amazing as yourself, why would I
No,
not? Why would I want to stop?
thank you. We've been having a lot of fun. Like you said, you can read more about him on Mountain Wisdom LLC on the internet. And does Mountain Wisdom LLC have a social media, or is it through Andrew Schubauer?
It's just through Andrew Schubauer.
Okay, so let's spell your last name.
Schubauer. It's SCHU and then Bauer, like Eddie Bauer.
Okay. And then I'm on social media too, Dr. Sarah Gordon on Instagram. The PhD Journey Unplugged podcast has a Facebook page, and Andrew and I have been doing some fun stuff together. So if you want to follow us, hope to do a lot more fun stuff out there. And yeah, this was great. I love this conversation. I think the timing of it, we've been talking about doing this for a while now. We finally got to it, and I think the timing's great. I can't wait to continue our conversations in the future. So thank you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for coming on the show. And yeah, everybody have a great a great year. Let's make 2026 a really great year. Let's go after our dreams, our
absolutely.
goals, and never give up. Never give up on yourself.
Never give up.
So,
I do want to say one thing. I know you want to sign off, and that was that, but I'm going to ruin it for you. What
why?
you said, I just want because. Um,
I said something wrong.
because you said something. It needed to
I
be
would say
addressed.
something.
One of the most important things that we didn't address
Yes.
is happiness or
Happiness.
joy in the process. Like
Yeah.
as you said, it's if you want to maintain your belief and find and maintain a valid reason why, you have to ultimately it should be about enjoying your life or helping someone else enjoy their life, increasing your level of fulfillment and joy. And what you said, when you shifted, it gave you more joy. You were able to have such a much better time doing it.
Yes.
And if you can find ways to enjoy the process, that's always going to be one of the best ways to maintain your belief because it's easier to maintain your why.
Okay,
And
I have
that's
an
it. I'm sorry.
idea. No, I love that. I love that. Are you kidding? And here's my suggestion. first of all, if you like this episode today, let us know. And I think the next one, we should build on this one, and it should be just what you just said. How do you find how do you find your
Hmm,
happiness? How do you find your why? How do you get there?
absolutely.
How do you feel more aligned in your life so you can feel that joy? So I would love that to be our next episode if you would like to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, everybody. We went a little bit longer than normal, but I think that it was important to do so. And I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we look forward to coming back.
Thank
Okay. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, Andrew.
you. Thank you.
All right. Bye.